we know that everyone cannot be entrepreneurs, right? So some of us need to focus on our careers. And how do we do that? That's why we have the amazing speakers today to be able to just show us how can we be really intentional with what we are doing with our careers, and how do we position ourselves as well. So for the first speaker, I'd like to welcome Doris. Doris, I see you are here already. Fantastic. It's a pleasure having you on. So I think I will give you the platform. You can go ahead.
Thank you so much. It's really, really great to be here. I think we can even just start as everybody else is feeling the poll.
Yeah.
But also it's interesting to see the results as they come in. Yeah, so great to be here. I think my name is Doris Muigei. I am the country director for Shortlist here in Kenya. I am also really, really passionate about helping people just live the best of their lives in terms of their careers. And a lot of my, a lot of my discussions and talks is really built from my own career. So I don't necessarily, I'm not here to tell you the theory of how a career is supposed to be. I'm here to share my life experiences and then see how yours, how you can fit yours into that. And I think today's topic is really relevant. Speaks a lot to me, which is being a bit more intentional with your career instead of waiting. I call it living your career by design instead of by default, which to me, default means throwing spaghetti on the wall and finding out which sticks. But more is how do you make sure that you're extremely intentional and you're living it in a way that makes sense. And whenever we say this, some people say, oh, but Doris, we don't have the luxury to live such a life. Some of us are hustling here and there, and there's no time. We just need to get a job. And I think I'll talk a bit about myself and my journey, and let's see how that resonates with you. So I am going to, okay, so if I look at the poll, it's very interesting. Okay, so a lot of you are employed, which is really good. Some are not, and I understand that, especially with the current situation.
Yeah.
Actively looking for a job. I like that there are people here who are very confident that they're not looking for a job, but they're still here anyway, because there's always learning. Quite a few of you have been job hunting. The larger percentage for less than 6 months, a lot of you for more than a year, and some of you for less than are not really job hunting, have not been job hunting. Okay, great. So it's just good to have that overall framework before, and Wendy, feel free to share the results with everybody else if you wish to. I am also, it's just good to say I am actually in Eldoret, so I'm part of the people who are shouting out from Eldoret, which just speaks to how working from home is a reality. So, and now it's actually working from the village, not just Eldoret. In a while, you'll probably you'll hear a chicken, there'll be a wild animal, not really wild, but a domestic animal somewhere along the way. Please forgive us. It's called the village life. So please allow me to share my screen in the interest of time, and then we can start. Just give me 1 minute. So what I really wanted to talk today about is just, so again, what do you do with the rest of your one wild, wonderful life? I'm sure this speaks to a lot of us, which is you had this really elaborate plan and coronavirus came and you're about to throw that away and start something completely different. And it's not just careers, it's companies, it's jobs. So it's not just about you, it's about everybody else, including companies, including families. This has completely shifted how we look at life, how we look at things. One, from a values perspective. Two, because we really don't have a choice. If you don't adjust to this, you're probably not going to survive it. So this probably brings us to the point where you need to be intentional, because the thing that has probably been affected the most is just obviously resources and jobs have been greatly impacted. So what we'll do very quickly is an introduction into COVID and its impacts. How do you imagine your life post-COVID? And then also, I think for me, I like having practical sessions. So what can we do with your next immediate steps to make sure that you're really going to be intentional about your career? I ask that each person has a pen and a paper. Please make sure you have a pen and a paper. I will give you a minute If you don't have a pen and a paper or a book or a notebook, a minute to get that, and then we shall continue, because it's extremely important that it is a working session. I think it's important for us to have a working session so that way you're able to actually come out of this with something. So so the minute is finished, and I'm sure the paper was just around the corner. So we shall continue. Okay, so it's not moving for some reason. Sorry guys, something is off. Give me a minute. I hope the internet is not giving me drama. Okay, great. So what I want us to do by the end of this session, at least you should have some guidance on how your career could take, but also some concrete ideas on the next steps. About me, so I have about 13 years experience in learning and development. I have been fortunate to work across Africa, probably in about 3 or 4 other continents. This is sort of a rough idea of how my career has been, and that's why I'm very passionate about people who are intentional about their careers. I have been a lifeguard. I have been a dive master I started my job as a lifeguard about a few donkey years ago. And then I went into reception. I have been a waitress. And then I moved more into what really, really gives me energy and joy, which is human resource training and development. Every time I left a job, it's because I'm either bored, I'm tired of training people, I want more, I'm not really good at this. When you look at this, you can think, oh, but maybe you had the resources, maybe you came from a connected family. And so this is my education. So can you guys see my screen? I don't think so. No. So I've been speaking to myself. Sorry about that, guys. I just realized my screen is not shared. Okay. So let me do this again from here. Sorry about that. So as I said, I am now the country director of Shortlist. I was in Career Connections, but I started my career as a lifeguard in Dubai a few years ago because I was wondering what that was about more than anything else. I also went to school in, this is extremely important. I went to primary school in a school in the village called Kebulonik Primary School in Nandi, where that's a real picture, a live picture of where I went to school. I had no connections. I did really well in my primary and I was admitted to Girls High School in Doret. After that, I went to Maseno University. I did a degree called Bachelor's of Housing and Interior Design. It looked cool as I was applying for it. I cannot draw a line to save my life. My design ability is as close to zero as anybody can get. But hey, here we are. We know if you have been to our public schools, you know how that happens. So I did a degree that really I couldn't do. It didn't matter whether I liked it. It's just I wasn't really able to do it. But along the way, I was very intentional with my career and I was able to design a life and a career that really, really gives me a lot of energy. And so after that and previous to that, I have done things that are very exciting to me. I have a master's in management psychology from the University of Nottingham. I have a diploma in executive coaching, and that's why I get excited about doing career coaching in my spare time. I also have a lot of certifications, but the goal is to say that just because I'm asking you to be intentional about your career, it doesn't mean you have to be coming from an extremely privileged background. It just means you need to be you need to be extremely intentional about how you're doing that. So this session will be useful for you if you're thinking of pivoting or changing your career, or if you've done a lot of work into understanding what your next 3 years need to be about. It might not be very useful if you're happy where you are and what you do. I'm not saying you have to leave now, but I just warning you in case you think I didn't deliver to your expectations. Okay, so as I said, grab a pen and a paper. You probably need to do a bit of homework. You can ask questions and seek clarity as we go along, but also be ready to challenge a lot of your assumptions, either today or later on how you do things. So I'll be also ready for that. So I think the first and important part probably to start is just COVID-proofing your career. So I guess in the chat box, I want people to answer, do you know if your job will exist as you know it now in the next 1 year? So in the next 1 year, will my job exist as I know it now? Can you guess and see what do you think about that? Cynthia says yes, no, yes, okay. All right. So it's a very mixed bag. Okay. It's already evolving. Agree, Wanjiku, completely. Valentine, definitely not. Aisha, good job. Absolutely. You're not sure, and that's fine. Njoki says that there's going to be major adjustments. So, and it's true, it's a mixed bag. Some jobs may not exist and some will exist. But we know that it will take about 2 years to regain some normalcy. Okay. We know that 20 to 35% of jobs as we know now will have disappeared. Okay. So, okay. So again, 20% to 35% of jobs, as we know now, will have disappeared. So very few companies will be able to provide you with a clear career path because they're also changing so quickly that they themselves are trying to understand their own career path. Okay. Again, and for you, what that means is that you have to optimize your potential. You must keep all your options open in case you need to make sudden career changes. So companies will continue reducing costs for the next 1 year. So what does this mean in general terms? It means that, sorry guys. So it means that you probably need to be just a little bit more intentional with your career, how you look at it and everything else. So what I wanted us to very, very quickly go through, and it's a really, really comprehensive course. So you don't, we will not do everything today. Phyllis, I hear you when you say you can almost see the end. I completely hear you, and I'm glad that you're aware of that. Is you're going to do something we are calling your career plan very, very quickly. It's coming off a book called Designing Your Life that is done by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. The reason why I'm doing this today is I'm actually going through the course myself. And so it's interesting to, and there's so much learning that I'm getting from it. But also and I'll share this with Wendy. So if you go into Shortlist, Course-Craft Careers, you can actually be able to go through not just designing your life at the Odyssey plan, but the grander scheme of how you can be able to think about your life. So the essence of it is that we all contain enough energy, talents, and interest to live different types of lives. And even if your job is changing now, asking which life is best is probably not a good thing. It's really, what can I do now to make sure that in another 2 or 3 years, I'm still living really my best life? I think this is extremely important. Sometimes we spend so much time thinking that this is it. What I'm doing now is the only thing I can do for life. And yet there could be so many paths that you can take, and interests and talents. And that is what being intentional about careers really is. So that's what I want us to cover today. With that pen that you have, sorry guys, there's a bit of noise from my end, sorry about that. So I want you to think very, very quickly about, may say you have an option of career 1. So the life you live already, that you're already in. So write down what is the career that you can live right now. So if everything continues as it is in your career, what does that career look like? You can even put a title if you want, in the next 2 years, okay? And then the other one is, what if tomorrow COVID, and for some of you, this is really practical. What if tomorrow COVID completely changes your career? Like imagine if you're told your career is no longer possible right now. What else do you think you're able to do? Okay, so that could easily be your career too. All right. And then career 3 is, imagine if you didn't care what life thought about you, what people thought with the career you did. Imagine if money was not an issue, what would you do? Okay, so we have those 3 scenarios there. Career 2 is usually very, very easy and very close to probably what you're doing. So it is just using what you have and probably shifting it, maybe online, using what you have and maybe trying it in a different angle or a different area, or sometimes just having a completely independent life. So for you to start thinking about, just because I'm in this career right now, doesn't mean there are no other changes. And then for those of you who are willing to share, I would really love to hear some ideas and examples. You can just put 1, this, 2, this, 3, this. I'm curious to see what you think your different paths and ideas and careers can be around. But you're free to share, but there's no pressure to share if you don't want to share. Okay, so this is step 1, thinking intentionally about what you want your next career to be like, what you want your next company to be about, so that when you move to that, when you start doing the homework, you're passionate about it. So once you've thought about that and you are pretty, not necessarily clear, that is step 1. Step 2 is where we really, really need to be intentional, okay? So where you start thinking, okay, so how can I lead that career right now? So I would tell you that in your day-to-day, how do you find small ways to carry into some of those lives? And I think number 1 for me is that no plan that you create will ever actually a lot of things that are happening. Be intentional and with those lives. I don't know how many of you are aware, but about 50 to 70% of jobs are filled before you get a chance to see the advert. So if you think you're going to think about that career that you've designed and say, okay, so let me start looking for those applications, you're really wasting a lot of opportunities. So 50% to 70, that's a big, big number. So even us at Shortlist, the jobs we get is probably because the employers try to find out within the company whether someone can do the job. They try to find out within their networks whether someone can do the job. And then when that failed is when they advertise the job. And even when they're advertising that job, for people who had designed their lives, chances are they're already at the forefront. So they're telling them, okay, we'll advertise this job because we are required to, but you know, you're definitely someone we are considering actively, okay? It's very expensive to recruit. So it's not something that companies necessarily want to do every day. So, so with that comes in something that I know some people do not necessarily want us to talk about, but the value of networking. And networking, I know, has a really, really sometimes bad connotation that people think, it's that thing where people do, and then the people who know how to talk are the ones who get jobs. The ones who don't know how to talk don't get jobs. I want you to reframe and think about networking very, very differently. When someone asks you, think about it this way. When someone asks you to for directions on the road, do you think they're networking? No, see, they're just asking where the direction is and how you can help them. After that, when you've given someone a direction, how do you feel? Do you feel like they took advantage of you? Probably not. You're like, okay, you know, I got to help someone. So I need you to change your mindset about networking and reframe it in a way that says, as long as I am not asking. So if someone was asking for directions and then asked you for food, you would be a bit hesitant. But if they just asked you for direction and you gave them and they went their way, you're like, you know what, no, that's okay, I can do that, and you feel good about yourself. So how do you change networking into feeling good about it and making other people feel good about it? Okay, so here is what you're going to do. So first, change your narrative about networking. And then remember the list you have of your careers. So let's say, pick one of your career choices. And sometimes this is a longer process than now. So pick one of those choices that you have. That's step 1. Step 2 is research on those companies that have positions around your career, okay? So say you have decided that you want to be a digital marketer. Let's use as an example. I want you to research on companies that are doing digital marketing that fit your purpose, your mission, and what you want out of life, okay? Think of the companies that would really, really excite you and research about that, all right? Next step is list 10 companies to start with. So digital marketing, you can say maybe agency. I want to think about Scanner. I want to think about Dentsu. Internally, Safaricom is really, really cool. I would love to work for Safaricom. Maybe Jumia. I don't know. Maybe KCB. So think about 10 companies that you think are really living the mission of what your career you want to be about. Next step is list the line managers in those companies. How do you do this? The value of the internet. We are living in such a beautiful age where you can actually go to the internet and do that. So find out the line managers or anybody else around that. List 2 or 3 employees in those companies. List 2 or 3 people that are doing the job you want, okay? And do not overthink, just really go through this as quickly as you can for now. The next step that you want to do is leverage your network. So you have this list, you thought about companies that you want to work, you know who's working in those companies. Please don't reach out to them first. I beg you, do not reach out to them. the best way to connect with someone is through a different connection. Your last choice is to reach out to them on LinkedIn and say, hey, here is my CV. Remember the person who was walking on the road who asked for directions, they didn't ask you for food. So don't ask for it first. Reach out, find other ways to network. So start with your immediate network. Do you know anybody in any of those companies who's interested? Ask them for an introduction. So always try and ask for an introduction, and make sure you send the person you're asking for a draft of what you want done. So don't say, hey, Ebu, introduce me to that guy in Safaricom. Say, I would like you to introduce me to this person in Safaricom. This is what they're doing. And please send them this draft that I have created about how you want to introduce myself. And then what you're doing is you're researching to understand the company and whether you'll be fit for that mission. Okay? You're not saying, I want to speak to you about getting a job in Safaricom. I want to speak to you about how it is to work as a digital marketer in Safaricom. What are your values? What do you reward? How did you get there? What excites you about that job? That's it. Okay. Step 5, if you have completed your immediate networks, you don't know anybody else. The other thing you can do is leverage the internet. So follow all those companies that you like on LinkedIn. Find a place of connection. Sorry, it says Plaza. Webinars, someone you follow on LinkedIn. Again, what you're trying to do as much as possible is find a connection that is not blind. Okay, if you have to do blind, that's fine. What I have seen people do, and some of the people I'm coaching do, is they follow them and then they go into webinars. You're the first one in a webinar, especially if the person you want to speak to is the one speaking. You listen to them, you contribute, you do the homework before, so that by the time you're even reaching out and saying, hey, it was great listening to you in this webinar 1, 2, 3. I liked what you said 1, 2, 3. You've already built a connection. Okay. So far, this does not need you to be connected to anybody. This is just bootstrapping your way into connections. Okay. So someone you follow on LinkedIn. So try and find different ways to connect with people that you think might help you. And when you do get a meeting with them, what I'd like you to do is, first of all, schedule the meeting, be on time. If you have a Zoom link or something, make sure you're the one sending it. If it's a call, make sure you're the one calling. So don't make people do the homework of organizing your own meetings. Like, be in charge of this as much as you can. So organize the meeting, have a list of questions. If you even want to do this over, send them an email before and write an agenda. So say, this is aspects that I'd like us to talk about. Ask those questions, and before that, research on them. Research on what is interesting. What you're looking for is emotional connections. We hire people we know. We hire people we are emotionally connected to. If you finish a call and you don't feel a connection, chances are you learn from it quickly and you change. Emotional connections come from things that you both like, things that you have read about them that you can help with. Maybe they wrote about the way they're struggling with homeschooling and you can teach their kids coding, anything. But find things that will make the person think, okay, this is interesting. And so connect with them, and then ask them the questions that you wanted around, again, what it is to work for them, your research questions as you want. And then after the call, and then whenever you can, try and find a way to give back. And give back means find a way to either share a blog you saw that was interesting to them, share a blog you saw that was interesting to them, find a way to maybe volunteer to do something for them that they're looking. But anyway, so let it be a win-win situation and not just you asking and not actually trying to see how you can give back. Okay. After that, please write and thank them and follow up with any follow-up actions. So as we agreed, you said you were happy to introduce me to 1, 2, 3 person who would be able to give me more information on this industry, on this market. You also said you had some good resources that I could read on 1, 2, 3, okay, and thank them for that. That to me is being more intentional with our career, especially if you're trying to change it. Because again, remember when you're changing a career, if you wait for an application, you're applying with everybody else, and some of the people you're applying with are really good. So let's say right now you're in sales and you want to move into digital marketing. If you wait for Dentsu to list a job on digital marketing, folks who are doing digital marketing now will get that job, hands down. And yet maybe you have the innate ability to do that, you just don't have the experience. But if you had connected with people at Dentsu, if they had understood your vision, if they had connected with you, they might give you a chance. even if it's a volunteer, even if it's part-time. So this is extremely important, especially if you're trying to change a career into something that is more meaningful, that gives you more energy or around that. Okay, I will stop here. I have spoken for 20 minutes nonstop, which is really not very much like me. And I'm looking, and please ask me any questions at this time, because I knew I had only 30 minutes, and I think I have another 5 minutes left out of this.
Yes, you do. Thank you so much, Doris, for those nuggets of wisdom. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Again, feel free to give your comments, your questions on the chat box, and Doris will be able to answer them. I really liked what you mentioned when you said we hire people we have emotional connection with. I never thought about it like that, but now you saying it sounds pretty different. Thank you so much for that. Yes, let's see. Do we have any questions? Charity, also just let me know if you have more questions from people on the Facebook platform as well as we continue with the session. I see Lena says that was really good. Thank you, Lena. Yes. So fast, no questions. But if you do have a question, feel free to put it on the chat box as well. And Doris will be here to just answer them as the session continues. But Doris, thank you so much for the session.
So for those of you who are really looking to just be a bit more intentional about what they want to do and their careers, if you go into Shortlist, and I'll share the link with Wendy so that you can all go there. There's a really beautiful, we've done a really good designing almost your career success, where you get to understand, you first do an online assessment, and then you do a bit of what we've done, which is the Odyssey plan, and then you do, then you also go through what we call the Wheel of Life. So there is a lot of resources that we have available to just help you think about your career a bit more critically, especially at this time. So please take advantage of that. Go in there, make sure you go through a lot of that resource. I'll also just share on the chat after this for it to help you. If you're really now being extremely intentional and you've done that, you're happy with it, and you now want to even get it further, I would ask and urge you to do the course that I'm currently doing, which is called Designing Your Life Workshops. It's interesting. It's by Kenyans Come Home, and you can go into their website. But again, it just helps you to wonder, what is it that I want to be, and how can I make sure that every day I'm living an extremely intentional life? So there are so many resources out there. I'll share some of them just on the chat right now. But all the best, guys. It's possible to really be very intentional with your career and actually be successful without necessarily having all the connections that people think are necessary to have to do this. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you so much, Doris. But we have a couple of questions actually coming through. The first one is from Caroline. She asks, kindly advise the job seekers on networking.
Networking has to be extremely intentional. My advice on networking is don't ask for things immediately. Think about that person who's asking for directions. They don't ask you for food. So always be intentional. Try and connect with someone else before you connect with them, and try and give back. Give something. There's always a resource you have to give someone, because again, they're taking their time. And look for emotional connections. The only way you get emotional connections if you've understood the person, if you've understood what they're doing, and you're able to come in with the homework. So do the work it requires to be able to connect. I think that is what I would advise about networking. And don't look at it as this thing people only do when these slimy salespeople who are just out there trying to get sales. Everybody can network. Everybody should, especially at this time, and especially if you're looking to change and pivot your career. It's almost impossible to get a job if you don't network, especially if you're pivoting your career. Yeah.
Okay, so we also have another question, Doris, from Jackie Intenyo. This is from Facebook. She asks, can you recommend a provider who can help with customizing career profiles, especially on LinkedIn?
That's a good question. I'm happy to share. I'll put it on my PowerPoint as I share with Wendy. And then also right now at Shortlist, you can also, we also have a really good, again, free of charge CV tool. So go into Shortlist, make your CV into, we actually have a tool right now currently that you can actually use for building your CV. So that is available, but I'm happy to explore who does LinkedIn profiles, and I can share that with Wendy.
We also have another question that's from Chege. So He or she asks, what approach would you advise someone trying to move from a technical field, e.g. food science, to non-technical, e.g. strategy or marketing?
Again, that's a really good question. Same thing. Do your homework, try things. Try. Don't jump from one career to another without trying. People, try and do a bit of volunteer work. Find a small SME, find a small founder who might be looking for you to do strategy for them. And then also pivot, start with small changes. So if you're a technical person, do strategy around technical roles, around technical companies. So try things before you make a big leap and 6 months later, you're like, oh, actually, I'm not excited by this. So you don't have to necessarily move. Volunteer in organizations, volunteer, be an advisory somewhere. So try small, and from there you understand. And then as you're doing that, remember, you're still building your profile, you're building your connections. And with time, you'll be, one, comfortable to know whether that's what you want to do. And two, people know you. Yeah, because you're looking for people to know you, for them to be able to be comfortable to hire you, I think. Yeah, one more question?
Yes, the last question. So Valentin asks, with many companies downsizing and laying off staff, is it a good time to actively look for a job?
Yes and no, and I understand this. The candidates were extremely hesitant right now to even apply for jobs, because it's true that employers have offered candidates jobs and then stopped that. I think if you're comfortable in a job and you're happy, fine, but it's the best time to be intentional about your careers. It's the best time to think, reflect, and start the small work that it takes. So again, I would not advise you to jump as quickly as you want. I would probably advise you to start thinking and talking to people and understanding what it is to work in those companies, because it's a really big decision. And I don't think you can afford 2 jumps in this situation. People, obviously, you know how we look at people who jump quickly as recruiters, no offense, but also you might not afford it. Not many people will be giving you can't be lucky 2 times. So do the homework it takes to make sure that the company you're going into is something that you want to be there for a while. I think that's what I would say. There's never a good time or a bad time to find a job. The best time now is because companies are pivoting. They're looking for really new experiences, new skills. So yeah, it is still a good time to find a job.